My name is Chris Fenney. Please call me Chris. I'm very comfortable with Chris. If you prefer the slightly more formal Mr. Chris, I do a lot of work with the SAF, CID, drug squad, prison service, probationary service, which is very interesting, very interesting. Well, let me tell you a little bit about my kind of more formal background. I'll tell you a little bit about me. The company is Training Edge, and my name is Chris Fenney, as I said. My first degree is in social studies, and in my 40s I went back to university and I did a master's in management learning and development. I'm a director of Training Edge. We set the company up here in Singapore about 8 years ago, and we've grown and grown and grown. We've been very, very successful. We've been lucky and we've worked hard, but we've been successful. And I look after training, management development, coaching across the whole of Asia Pacific. Singapore company, I'm based in Singapore. I live in Upper Bukit Timah, Springdale actually. But I travel non-stop. I'm probably SI's best customer at the moment. And I do a lot of work in China at the moment. I'm almost commuting to Shanghai. Do a lot of work in Sri Lanka, Philippines, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Malaysia. I was in Saudi Arabia for the first time 2 weeks ago. So I travel a lot with the job. And I guess if you were to kind of look back on over my life, you'd split it 20 years corporate life. 20 years working for large MNCs. The last 10 years I was either HR director or vice president of HR. And in this time I worked for an big American MNC. I've lived and worked in America. I worked for a big South African mining conglomerate, and I've lived in Africa, South Africa. Travelled Africa, but I've lived in Africa. And I was based in Europe. I kind of travelled Europe extensively. And then 18 years doing what I'm quite passionate about, which is management development, training, coaching. And I operate at virtually every level. And I'm very, very lucky. I'm privileged. I am. I have access to all of the large organisations. I work with virtually every level. I see what's happening. I see all the trends. And I like people. I like being around people. So I'm quite lucky in what I do as well. I started in 1970. A long time ago. Was anybody born in 1970? I started as a graduate trainee in 1970. And it was personnel in those days. It wasn't called HR. So I started as a personnel officer, personnel manager, HR controller. So all my life, all my working life, training, management development, HR issues, people issues. We're going to be looking at presentations, and that's what we're going to be doing for 2 days. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and show you kind of some of the techniques. I'm going to talk about some of the problem areas. For instance, you may or may not know that fear of speaking in public is the #1 fear of all managers all around the world. I'd like to just to show you, you've got 2 books. You've got a power book, How to Be an Impactful Presenter. And I'm going to follow the outline. I will go off and we'll do different things, but essentially I'll stick to the outline. And you've got a power journal, which is essentially for notes and for comments and for things that you might want to record. I am going to be in the power book unless I say otherwise. All right. So unless I say otherwise, I'll be always in the power book. So any reference I give you will be the power book unless I say differently. So on page 6 of 63 and 7 of 63, a little kind of self-reflection. My strengths as a presenter. My strengths as a presenter. And what I'd like you to do is, on the bullet points on page 7, I'd like you to think, what do you see as your strengths? See, I have just watched you just do the very first kind of like introductions. But straight away, I know I'm with a group that is very confident, that are going to be very successful, that can stand up and do things irrespective of how they feel inside. Now that's the key. Irrespective of how they feel, they have the confidence to project. And that's incredibly important, because that's really what presentation's all about. So I'd like you just to capture the strengths that you think that you have as a presenter. And that's fairly straightforward. I'd like you to turn then to page 8 of 63. And I'd like you to look at some of the downsides. I hate the term weakness, but where are the developmental areas? Where are areas that you think you'd like to improve? Now, I want to make it clear, I'm not going to discuss these, so I want you to be as honest with yourself as possible. But when you look at the developmental areas, if there's any of these areas that you'd like to talk to me about over the next 2 days, you're very, very welcome. Just privately, one-to-one. Very, very welcome. All right. But I just want you to reflect and capture strengths and the areas that perhaps you think I would like to develop.